My name is Samuel Alexander. I'm a wireless roaming singer-guitarist, and I perform for luxury weddings and events. One onstage moment that made you think, this is why I do this. On stage is interesting. I will say that I've had multiple experiences of people coming up to me and telling me how much my music impacted them emotionally, and the sense of peace that it brought them in the midst of whatever they might have been going through at the time. And anytime I've ever been able to get that kind of reaction from someone has been very life-giving and ultimately deeply reconnects me with the greater purpose that I think playing music serves. And so I can't think of a specific single moment, but it's happened many times that people have come up to me and expressed that what I do touched them in a way that was profound. And that has always been something that really energizes me and brings me back to what it's all about. Is that cool? Lengthy answers like that? Okay, awesome. Your guilty pleasure song you secretly love. Guilty pleasure. I would say, I don't know that I have any guilty pleasure songs. I think that my guilty pleasure with songs is that when I fall in love with one, I end up listening to it on repeat for days on end. I think anybody else would be driven mad by being in the car with me and being just in my general space, because once I fall in love with a song, I can't stop listening to it until I've pretty much played it out and I'm not interested anymore. So I have more of a guilty pleasure habit around listening as opposed to a particular song. Your guitar gets a nickname. What do you call it? I actually have a name for my acoustic guitar that I primarily play, and her name is Lynn James. And that name came from the middle names of my Uncle Greg Lynn, and my grandpa Arlo James. Those are their middle names, Lynn and James, but I lost both of them in about a 3-month period right before I got that guitar. And so it's always meant a lot to me that I was able to get that instrument and go through some of the healing process of losing them on it. And so that was the first thing I did, was name it in their honor. So Lynn James is my guitar. If your music could be in any film, which one would it be? There are so many films that make me feel something, and it is a dream to be able to participate in a movie and to be able to score it and have my music be part of the emotional landscape of a film. If I had to pick one that I think my music would make sense in, that is so hard. Oh man, that's a tough question. I might skip that one, to be honest. It's hard for me to think of one on the spot. If you could collaborate with anyone, who would it be? I think that probably one of my primary collaboration dreams would be John Mayer, just because he's been such an influence on me. And I feel like I've studied him a lot, and I really connect with his ethos around creating. And I know it's a little bit of a basic answer, but I just genuinely am touched by John Mayer's music and the way that he creates and what he does. So I think that would be a dream collaboration, because it would feel really full circle for me. If your music were a flavor, what would it taste like? I would like to imagine that music that I make is primarily creamy. I think creamy and vanilla-y, and with a little bit of a unexpected twist. I think that I have a sound that is very R&B and might come across as a surprise from how I look So I think that my flavor profile would be similar in that it would be rich and enjoyable and smooth, but it would also have a little bit of an unexpected twist and a little zing going on. If your life had a soundtrack, which song would open it? The opening song for my life's soundtrack, it would probably be the song Hard Rock Bottom of Your Heart by Randy Travis. And I say that because there's a story in my family about when I was very young, that was the CD that my dad had in the car at almost all times. And apparently that song was my favorite one. I don't remember this, but I didn't have many words in my vocabulary, but I had a habit of getting in the car and asking for Hard Rock Heart because I wanted to hear that song every time. So I think that song holds a special place in my heart, and it would be the opening track for sure. If your voice had a dating profile, what would it say? I think in terms of what I would be trying to articulate in a dating situation would be representative of values. So I genuinely carry myself in a way that prioritizes treating others well and leaving space for people to express themselves and accepting people for who and where they are. So I think that would be where my voice would be coming from in that context. The hardest part of your craft that no one ever sees. I think that what can be the most challenging part of performing is staying in touch with the intention that you have whenever you make a note. So it's a constant effort to stay reminded of what you're trying to express and not phoning it in at any point. People know when you mean it, and they know when you're just going through the motions. And ultimately, it's a self-perpetuating cycle once you get over the hump of committing to the feeling. Because once you're in it and you start to express it, people feed off that and then they respond, and then you're off to the races. But you have to draw up that emotion within yourself first and use that to motivate and inspire all the sounds that you make. So that can be a challenge at times, especially when the environment is hectic or not conducive to that. But it's imperative in order to actually say something that means something. The wildest thing someone's asked you to play. The wildest thing. I get a lot of crazy requests. The wildest thing. I'm trying to think if there's anything that's exclusively over the top. I've definitely had a lot of people request something like an instrumental EDM track or something from me when I'm just playing guitar. Some people don't quite understand the mechanics of how music translates from one genre to another. So there's been multiple times that I'm playing guitar and singing and somebody wants to hear a dubstep song. So that's pretty wild. What's always in your guitar case? My guitar case is pretty stripped down, pretty bare bones. I keep it pretty pragmatic and functional. So there's always extra strings. There's always extra picks. There's always a capo. There's always a tuner. And there's always a rag, because one of my pet peeves is having an instrument that's dirty. It just distracts me and makes me not want to play it. So every time I pick it up, I make sure and I clean it, I wipe it down, make sure everything feels nice and fresh. It's like walking into a house with a bunch of rooms that are already clean. It just allows me to create without any clutter. You jam with your younger self. Which song do you teach them? I think if I was making music with my younger self, that the number one thing I would prioritize would be what I mentioned earlier, which was the importance of being expressive. So I think the song that I would focus on would be one that meets my younger self where he was. Maybe something that's a little beyond where he is at the moment, just to give him something to reach towards. But I would want to open his ears to a certain extent, and then also give him something tangible that matches where he is. I think the song that comes to mind would probably be So What by Miles Davis. I think that lives in that range where it's new and fresh and interesting enough for a younger version of me to be excited about. It's also simple enough that we could get going quickly, and rich enough that we could chew on it for years. When you're not on stage, where would we find you? I am a pretty big homebody, so if I'm not on stage, I'm 98% of the time at home or out for a walk. I like to walk a lot just to kind of take in the environment and give my mind some breaks. I have found that I have adapted a lot of my hobbies and enjoyable activities that aren't music related to be something that I can do at home. So if I'm not on stage playing, I'm probably at home practicing or drawing or sitting by the fire or out for a walk. What's the song you can't resist playing every time you pick up a guitar? Ooh. I think the song that I end up playing almost always when I pick up my guitar, would be, It's a great question. Incidentally, I have some more like chords that I play. It's not so much a song. If I was gonna say one, it's probably something along the lines of like "You Remind Me" by Usher. I think that those chords that are in that song and in that key and everything, they just feel really good in my hands. So whenever I pick up the guitar, I kind of end up playing some kind of iteration of that just feels nice. It's just a nice way to introduce myself to the instrument at the beginning of the day. How would you describe your vibe in a single phrase? I would like to think that I am generally optimistic and warm-hearted. I think those are things that I relate to and find a lot of joy in trying to embody. The most unexpected place you've ever performed live? Unexpected place. I've done some cool gigs in some weird places. I've played in a lot of basements. I've played on boats. And that's a great question. The most unexpected place I've ever played. There have been so many gigs over the years. I'm really trying to think of which ones stand out. I would say some of the places that I never really anticipated that I would end up playing, but have been a joy, have been out in Joshua Tree National Park. So I've done some wedding work out there where I've done a lot of elopements. And the company that I worked with was set up to do the elopements out in the actual park itself. So I've found myself standing on rock formations, looking out over beautiful, vast wilderness in very quiet air and open space. And that is wild to me in how raw it is. It's about as far away from a stage as you could be. If you had a music superpower, what would it be? I think if I was able to have a superpower with music, it would be to never forget a lyric, because I struggle with that. And going back to what's the hardest part of playing and that nobody sees is probably all the time I spend memorizing lyrics. I quiz myself all the time to say, what's the third line of the third verse of this song or whatever, and I have to go through it in my mind and get to it as fast as I can. So yeah, if I had a superpower with music, I'd be able to memorize every lyric off the top and never have to practice that. If your guitar could talk, what would it say about you? I think my guitar would be a little sick of me, and I would hope that it would also say that it feels that I have a gentle touch. One of the things I've really worked on over the years is learning how to be very relaxed while I play. And with that relaxation and that ease comes a lot of expression and the freedom for that. So I would hope that my guitar would what's the word I'm thinking of? I would hope that my guitar would acknowledge that I've grown a lot in how gentle I can be with it and how much room that leaves us for dynamics. One thing about you that would surprise your audience. My audience might be surprised to learn that I came into music a little later than in life. Not too late, but I really didn't have any music in my life until I was about 16. So I had a very short stint of piano lessons when I was in second grade, and I didn't like having to learn how to read music, so I left it alone. And then I didn't have much of a musical environment growing up. I just listened to whatever my friends suggested. And then when I turned 16, right around there, I got introduced to the guitar. And once I picked one up and learned a couple of notes, I was absolutely hooked. And I actually went to school for guitar, college for guitar, and didn't start singing until a couple years into school. So I had a bunch of friends that were music majors, that were all musicians, and they were already quite a few light years ahead of me, and they were at the point where they were writing their own music. So we had a weekly hang where we were sitting on this lawn, and everyone would share the songs they had written that week. And I never had a song to share because I was still kind of getting familiar with everything. And the first time that I brought something to the table and I sang it for everybody, I was so nervous. I was quivering. And immediately everyone on the lawn just started to clap, and they applauded me for having such a great voice. And they were also as surprised as I was. So that was a cool moment. Your biggest oops moment on stage. Oh, there's been a handful of those. Biggest oops. I have embarrassingly done certain things to try and ease my own anxieties on stage, because I still get anxious on stage. And there's been a couple of times where I went to the bar one too many times before playing, and had one instance where after messing up almost every chord in the song, I picked the microphone stand up and was trying to move it out of the way for some reason, and I misjudged how far the edge of the stage was, and I put that microphone stand all the way off the edge of the stage, and I pretty much went right down with it afterwards. So that was a big learning lesson for me to keep that in check and find other healthy ways to deal with my anxiety on stage. That's probably the one that I relate to, that I go back to the most often in order to keep myself in line. That's it. That's all 20 questions.